The Headless Mother. The old mansion on the outskirts of Da Nang stood as a haunting symbol of eerie silence. With its cracked walls and weathered gray tiles, it resembled a heavy shroud, hiding dark secrets within. On rainy nights, the house morphed into a ghostly silhouette, looming under the dim streetlights like an ancient creature, still and watchful, never fully at rest. Trang, a young and vibrant woman, was assigned to care for little Linh, unaware that she was about to face a life-or-death battle with supernatural forces. The moment she stepped into the mansion, she sensed something strange. Unexplainable noises, the creaking of the stairs, and an unsettling feeling as if a million unseen eyes were watching from every shadowed corner. Bitch, the elderly housekeeper with a wrinkled face and fearful eyes, warned Trang in a hushed tone. Mrs. Ngoc, the previous mistress of the house, died in a tragic accident, but her spirit never left. She still roams these halls, waiting. Strange things began to happen as Trang took care of Linh. The little girl, only 8 years old, often exhibited unsettling behavior. She would sit alone, clutching an old doll tightly, talking to it as though it were her only friend. Occasionally, Trang heard Linh whisper and giggle, "Mom's visiting me, Miss Trang." Those words sent chills down Trang's spine. For Lin's mother, Mrs. Ngoc, had been dead for years. One night during a storm, Trang was awoken by a peculiar noise. Footsteps, light and rhythmic, like nails tapping on wooden floors. Trang got out of bed, her heart pounding as the dim hallway lights cast ghostly shadows. A faint, misty figure moved slowly through the dark corridor. Driven by an irresistible curiosity, Trang followed. The figure led her to Mrs. Ngoc's room, the room that had been locked for years. The rusty door, once firmly sealed, now stood slightly ajar like a gateway to the underworld. With trembling hands, Trang gripped the handle. As the door creaked open, a foul stench filled the air. An overwhelming odor of death that could never be erased. The curtains fluttered despite the absence of wind, and the room felt icy and oppressive. On the large bed in the center of the room, a woman in a white ao dai sat silently, her back turned to Trang. Her long, black hair cascaded down, covering her entire back and arms. Trang froze in place, unable to move. Suddenly, the figure slowly turned, revealing a sight that felt like the gates of hell had opened before her. There was no head, only a dark, empty space where her face should have been. No eyes, nose, or mouth, just a void of horror. Mrs. Ngoc's headless ghost rose slowly, stepping toward Trang. Every step brought a sound so grotesque, like the moaning of trapped souls. The coldness seeped into Trang's bones, and her legs refused to move. In a desperate panic, Trang screamed and ran from the room, but before she could escape, a cold, stone-like hand gripped her shoulder. The icy chill shot through her body, nearly causing her to collapse. The next morning, Trang woke up in her bed, feeling as though it had all been a nightmare. But the bruises on her shoulder and the lingering presence in the house proved that everything was real. Mrs. Ngoc's wrath was not simply about vengeance for her death. Her demise had not been an accident. It had been a cruel conspiracy orchestrated by her husband, Mr. Hai. Mrs. Ngoc had died in agony and fury, and her spirit had returned to seek the justice she never received. Hai, whether oblivious or willfully ignorant of his wife's presence, continued to live as if nothing had happened. But the truth was that the haunting was slowly eroding his mind. He began to have terrifying nightmares. In these dreams, he was pulled into a dark forest, the scene of the accident. There, Mrs. Ngoc, dressed in her white ao dai, stood in the middle of a blackened river, clutching something tightly. As he approached, she raised her hand, holding her own severed head. Despite her lack of a mouth, her smile radiated hatred and malice, her eyes brimming with contempt. He wanted to flee, but his legs were trapped in the mud, unable to escape. Hai's sanity began to unravel as he was haunted by the sound of ghostly footsteps and eerie laughter echoing through the house. Every time he passed Mrs. Ngoc's room, he felt an overwhelming chill, and at times he glimpsed her shadowy figure standing in the dark, waiting for the moment when he would face his reckoning. Eventually, unable to bear the guilt and the haunting any longer, Hai ran from the house, like a madman, heading toward the riverbank where Mrs. Ngoc had died. Trang and Bitch, sensing something was wrong, followed him. They found Hai standing by the river, staring into the black waters with wide, crazed eyes. In his panic, Hai began to scream, begging for forgiveness from the unredeemable spirit. From beneath the murky surface, a pale, cold hand reached up, grabbing Hai's leg. He struggled, but the force from below and the bone-chilling cold pulled him down. Trang and Beach could only watch in horror as Hai was swallowed by the dark waters. The river quickly returned to its serene, undisturbed state, as though nothing had ever happened. The mansion, with all its mysteries and unrelenting wrath, continued to stand, silently waiting for the next person, brave or foolish enough to enter. Each night, in the darkened house, the ghostly laughter of Mrs. Ngoc still echoed, a chilling reminder that her fury and the sins of the past would never be forgiven or forgotten. The Phantom Train 4D44. In the outskirts of a sprawling city, amidst rolling hills and a crumbling old railway, lies an abandoned station, infamous for its dark legend. The Phantom Train 4DL44, a train said to have vanished after a catastrophic accident many years ago, is rumored to reappear on each full moon, carrying with it a curse, an eternal journey with no return. Those brave or foolish enough to board are condemned never to return. Enticed by the tale, a group of young friends, Hai, Minh, Lan, and An, decide to uncover the truth. Skeptical of the supernatural and dismissive of old folk tales, they set out to investigate the legend for themselves. On that fateful night, the sky is clear, yet ominously still, with the full moon hanging like a watchful eye over the landscape. The four friends stand before the dilapidated station, their hearts racing with both excitement and trepidation. The station, once a bustling hub for the ill-fated train 4044, now lies in ruins, overgrown with vines and lost to time. An eerie silence envelops the area, punctuated only by the distant, jarring sound of metal wheels grinding along rusted tracks. A faint, ghostly light emerges from the darkness, growing more distinct with each passing moment. The Phantom Train 4044 materializes from the void, its appearance as if conjured from nightmares. The train, shrouded in dust and rust, bears the marks of time and neglect. The locomotive, distorted and foreboding, seems like a monstrous relic from another world. No words are exchanged as the group stands frozen, their eyes locked on the spectral train. Lan shivers as a cold wind sweeps through, but Hai, trying to mask his own anxiety, smiles confidently. "It's just a story," he says, attempting to dispel their fear. Yet deep down, they all feel a disquieting sensation, an unsettling awareness of something unseen watching them. Suddenly, a spine-chilling screech echoes through the night, a sound that could only be the train's brakes. The train's door creaks open on its own, an ominous invitation. Without hesitation, Hai steps aboard, followed by Minh, Lan, and An. The moment their feet touch the floor, the door slams shut behind them with a dry, resonant thud. Inside, the train is a realm apart from the ordinary. The air is thick and oppressive, the dim lights casting eerie shadows on the walls. The once plush seats are now tattered and covered in dust and cobwebs. The silence is deafening, broken only by their footsteps, echoing in the confined space. Minh attempts to lighten the mood with a joke. It's probably just a set for some horror film. His voice trembles despite his bravado. No one responds. The oppressive atmosphere grows heavier with each step they take, the air growing colder and more suffocating. Without warning, a new sound pierces the silence, a deep, mournful sigh that seems to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. The group halts, their faces etched with fear. Hai shines his flashlight ahead, but the beam only reveals darkness, amplifying their dread. The lights flicker and die, plunging them into an abyss of pitch-black darkness. A moment of paralyzing stillness follows before the lights flare back on, revealing ghostly apparitions materializing throughout the train. Spectral figures, their eyes hollow and lifeless, stand still and watch the intruders with an eerie calm. Lan screams, stumbling back into a seat while Minh struggles to maintain his composure, his hands trembling uncontrollably. "What is this nightmare?" he mutters. The ghosts remain motionless, seemingly awaiting something. Then, one of the apparitions begins to move towards them. It is a woman with a ghastly, distorted face and eyes as white as the moon. Her mouth stretches into a grotesque grin as she speaks in a chilling, echoing voice. "You shouldn't be here." Suddenly, the train distorts, the carriage elongates, walls tremble, and the floor beneath their feet fractures. Hai collapses, feeling as though he is falling into an endless abyss. Minh, Lan, and An are similarly engulfed, like finding themselves in a nightmarish alternate realm. They awaken in a pitch-black room, surrounded by faint, agonizing moans and heavy, disembodied footsteps. A flickering oil lamp casts ghostly light on faces that are twisted in eternal torment. The phantoms, now grotesque and deformed, writhe in unending suffering and resentment. Lan tries to run, but every step feels like trudging through thick, cloying mud, her legs sinking deeper into an invisible mire. Min is pulled back by unseen hands, feeling their icy grip tightening around his throat. Hai and An are drawn into bizarre, personal nightmares where their deepest regrets and sins play out vividly, tormenting them from within. The Phantom Train 4044 is not merely a vehicle, but an elaborate psychological trap. It knows the darkest fears of each individual, using them to inflict relentless psychological torture. Hai witnesses the ghostly image of his younger sister, whose death he accidentally caused in a past accident. Min is haunted by the image of a woman he betrayed, her eyes filled with vengeful sorrow. Lan and An are also tormented, each facing their unique horrifying visions that mock and tear at their sanity. As they struggle to escape, the darkness deepens. The spectral figures grow increasingly aggressive, attacking with chilling ferocity. The moans, screams, and ghastly laughter fill the air, and the boundary between reality and nightmare becomes indistinguishable. The train continues its relentless journey through an eternal void of darkness. There is no escape, no light at the end of the tunnel. The sounds of despair, agony, and twisted mockery surround them. The souls trapped within this phantom train have become part of its eternal torment, endlessly bound to its cursed rails. Ultimately, the friends are doomed to the same fate. Their chance to escape is lost as they are absorbed into the train's malevolent cycle, becoming part of the spectral passengers. The Phantom Train 4044 ensures that their journey, one of horror, remorse, and eternal punishment, never truly ends.